In a game like Elden Ring, created by two literal geniuses, you're bound to hear some absolute poetry in the form of boss voice lines. So, in today's video, I'm going to be ranking the Elden Ring bosses based solely on their way with words. Oh boy. So let's start off with the elephant in the room, shall we? Miquella, the bloody kind, has absolutely god-awful voice lines. Let me quickly discuss how I've decided what makes a voice line good or trash, at least in my opinion. It's basically a combination of three factors. Firstly, the actual line itself in terms of its intelligent writing and flow. Secondly, the delivery of the line by the voice actor is always important. And finally, how the line ties into the lore of the game as a whole, and whether it helps us gain a bit of understanding into the character who's voicing them. Miquella the Kind delivers on absolutely none of these fronts. Let's listen to some of them, shall we?
Tarnished One, aspiring Lord of the Old Order. If you have known sin, if you grieve for this world, then yield the path forward to us, to I, Miquella, and my promised consort, Radahn.
Jesus Christ, it's so bad. I could sit here and recite to you at least one voice line of every major boss off the top of my head because they're just memorable like that. This was the only boss in the whole list that I had to rewatch all the cutscenes because I remembered literally none of the dialogue. The lines themselves are mediocre at best. Then, the voice acting is terrible compared to some of the bangers higher up on this list, and the entire monologue tells us nothing about Miquella that we don't already know by this point. I'm not even going to discuss the memory you see at the end because what the hell is this? If you take this entire scene out, literally nothing changes. There was no point to include the memory at all. Okay, wow, rant over. Let's move on, shall we?
Join myself and King as family.
Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy. Now, this one being so near the bottom of the list might be controversial because of how iconic his voice lines are. But iconic doesn't always mean good. Don't get me wrong, some of his lines are really funny and have made for some really great memes. But Elden Ring is quite a serious game, and the delivery of these lines makes it as unserious as it gets. I also can't decide if this is the most talented voice acting I've ever heard or the worst, so I just defaulted to the worst. I'm sure Bro's throat was red raw by the end of this recording session.
Join myself and King as family.
Now we can devour the gods together! Yeah, now is a good time to mention that I'm going to try and recreate some of my favorite lines for my own enjoyment. Be warned though, I ain't no voice actor, that's for sure.
The depths of your foolishness!
Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame, unfortunately suffers from the same fate as Rykard. A little bit too memey, in my opinion. And of course, after he transforms into the Lord of Frenzied Flame, he has zero dialogue, which does make sense, but it just means he lacks in total voice lines. Definitely not bad by any means though. Although a bit memey, the depths of your foolishness is very memorable, and on top of that, asking for Nanaya's forgiveness in this scene before cleaving himself open with the greatsword of damnation does give us some insight into the lore relationship between them, which is also good.
I ask you forgive me, dearest Nanaya.
And why I think he deserves a higher placement than Rykard. This cutscene in itself is really good, but like I said, it just lacks in the voice line department, so I couldn't really rank it higher. Coming in at number 10, we've got the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. Now, this creature itself doesn't actually have any voice lines, and it's the Horn-Sent Grandam who speaks during the cutscene, but I decided for this boss only to count another's voice as the boss's voice. I also think that all the placements from here to number 3 are somewhat interchangeable and are all pretty banging, and I'm open to any discussion that could change my mind. Upon first watching this cutscene, I thought it was cool, but I couldn't understand jack shit of what was being said. But I thought the line where she says, "We beg of thee, rise."
We beg of thee, rise.
And then after that, the beast immediately starts moving and awakening was a really good line. But perhaps my favorite line is when she says, "Cleanse away the strumpet's vile progeny."
Cleanse away the strumpet's vile progeny.
Now, I had no idea initially what this meant, but after doing some fancy Shakespearean translation, it basically means cleanse away the whore's disgusting offspring. So the Horde Saint Grandam is calling Marika a whore and that the divine beast should cleanse her vile children, aka Mesma, which I thought was a really great line.
Long and hard, long and hard.
Oh boy, I'm gonna get annihilated in the comments for this one. But hear me out. The reason I didn't place Godfrey lower is because he pays us too much respect, and he's just too much of a good guy. Now you may be thinking, what the hell, that makes no sense. But I honestly prefer it when the boss completely disrespects you just so you can put them in their place once you've mastered the fight. Nonetheless, Godfrey has some bangers. My personal favorites are "Long and hard didst thou fight, tarnished warrior, spurned by the grace of gold."
Long and hard didst thou fight, tarnished warrior, spurned by the grace of gold.
This is a great line because by this point in your first playthrough, you have indeed fought long and hard, and it's nice that someone appreciates it because I guarantee you, your friends and family don't give a fuck. But yeah, like I said, as nice as it is, I prefer the disrespect. And the delivery on "Now I fight as Horalu, warrior" is just absolutely amazing, so I gotta give him credit for that one as well.
Now I fight as Horalu, warrior! Nihil! Nihil! Nihil!
Mohg, the Lord of Blood. Now, I think the voice actor did an absolutely bang-up job here with Mohg's voice. At least a lot better than Rykard, which means all his voice lines are already a little bit better. What I like most about Mohg's voice lines, however, is that he speaks a lot during the fight and not just in the cutscene. The counting down from 3, 2, 1, just to smack you with the almighty Nihil is some great voice acting and delivery, especially on the Nihil. Also, fun fact, I discovered during the recording of this footage that Nihil is the only attack in the game that can still hit you even when you have your hitbox turned off. Crazy. My two favorite lines from Mohg are, however, "Miquella is mine and mine alone," which he says upon defeating you.
Miquella is mine and mine alone.
Ironic because Miquella was definitely not his alone and he actually got around town quite a lot. Dirty little boy. But I think Mohg has the best death voice line in the game. "I can see it as clear as day. The coming of our dynasty."
I can see it as clear as day. The coming of our dynasty. Morgwyn.
I'll soon birth thee anew, a sweeting, fresh and pure.
Renala, the Queen of the Full Moon. Initially, I had Renala placed at 10th on this list, but upon reflection, I realized she's actually got some bangers. In my first playthrough, I was already enjoying Elden Ring, but when I got to Renala's cutscene was when I completely fell in love with the game and realized it was more than just a game. That opening cutscene is so eerie and creepy, and then to just have it swapped to her being even more creepy with her sweeting talk is just pure gold. The lines, the delivery, and the lore implications are all top-notch for Renala, and I think she deserves this spot. A great part about her as well is that unlike with other bosses, upon defeating her, you can still talk to her and gain additional dialogue.
To become a sweeting, reborn of my beloved egg.
Granted, it's basically her just rambling about you becoming her sweeting, but it's good enough. My favorite line from her though is during transition to phase 2 when she says, "Ye will be countless born forever and ever."
Ye will be countless born forever and ever.
This line is just so ominous, creepy, and really makes you scared for what's about to happen. Absolutely top-notch stuff. Such a pity her sister didn't even get one singular voice line because I feel like she could have been high up on this list with all of her lore implications.
I am the lord of all that is golden.
Godric the Grafted. Despite Godric being a pitiful weakling, his character is expertly handled by FromSoft. He is the weakest demigod, but at the early point he's placed in the game, he's a formidable foe for the Tarnished, and has some great voice lines to add to his character. Some of his most notable cutscene lines are, "I command thee, kneel," before slamming his axe into the ground.
I command thee, kneel!
And then, of course, the Phase 2 transition where he screams, "Bear witness," whilst grafting a literal dragon head onto his arm is just absolutely peak cinema, in my opinion. One of the best Phase 2 transitions for sure. But my favorite parts about Godric are actually his lines during the fight. I really like, "Lowly Tarnished, thou art unfit even to graft."
Tarnished, thou art unfit even to graft.
Basically saying, "You're so pathetic, you're not even worth grafting onto myself." What a legend. And he also has a really fantastic death line. "I am the lord of all that is golden, and one day we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays of gold."
I am the lord of all that is golden, and one day we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays of gold.
I am Melania, Blade of Mikola.
Melania, the Blade of Mikola, places much higher on the list than her stupid twin, because she is just a much better character in general. Don't get me wrong, the storyline of Mikola's journey for a compassionate world through his own form of cruelty is great, but when you see Mikola himself, he's just disappointing. Melania, on the other hand, is the opposite. I guarantee you anyone who has fought her will never forget the phrase, "I am Melania, Blade of Mikola,"
Melania,
the prime
Blade
example
of
of an iconic line that is iconic for all the good reasons and not the bad. Saying this to you before menacingly swiping her katana through the air, telling you she has never known defeat, is enough to get the goosebumps going. Not to mention her repeatedly saying it to you over and over again just to remind you who she is. Some of my favorite from her are, "My flesh was dull gold and my blood rotted." Beautifully written and delivered.
My flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted.
Also, when she kills you in Phase 2, she says, "Let your flesh be consumed by the scarlet rot," which is just spine-tingling. But perhaps my absolute favorite line from her comes in her phase transition. After witnessing her go through this beautiful yet terrifying transformation, she simply says, "Now rot."
Now, rot.
It seems like a very simple line on the surface, but it's very effective at instilling fear in the player, who now knows they're about to get violated. Okay, but now we're getting to the bosses who I think are immaculate in their voice lines, and I wouldn't change anything about them. At number 4, we have my main man, Margit. Of course, Margit and Morgott are the same person, but they're different boss fights with different lines for the most part, so I've separated them for the purposes of this video. I mean, what more do you want from a character? Perfect writing, perfect delivery, and great lore implications. Foul tarnish, emboldened by the flame of ambition. Someone must extinguish thy flame. Put these foolish ambitions to rest. Thou art of passing skill. Warrior blood must truly run in thy veins. Tarnished. Incredibly memorable and well-designed character, and definitely worthy of number 4. I mean, this guy just spews absolute filth every time he opens his mouth. My goodness. It seriously sounds like poetry every time he speaks, and you can feel the raw emotion in his voice. One of the greatest characters FromSoft have ever created for sure. Some of his notable cutscene lines are, "Thy kind are all of a piece, pillagers, emboldened by the flames of ambition."
Thy kind are all of a piece. Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition.
He's basically saying the other demigods are all the same, blinded by their own self-interests and greed. And he actually has a right to say that, because despite his persecution for being an omen, he still never served his own self-interests for revenge and stuck to defending the Golden Order. A man of incredible willpower and honor. Have it writ upon thy meager grave, felled by King Morgott, last of all kings.
Have it writ upon thy meager grave, felled by King Morgott, last of all kings.
Is just also such a fiery line to say to you whilst revealing his Damascus blade. And it doesn't even stop there. His best lines come during and after the fight. Whilst transitioning into phase 2, he says, "The thrones, stained by my curse. Such shame I cannot bear." The pure emotion in this line just breaks my heart. But the writing here is so great that it seamlessly transitions into more dialogue. "The thrones, stained by my curse, such shame I cannot bear. Thy part in this shall not be forgiven." I don't know, but the way that they could each be 2 separate lines but seamlessly flow into one another is an example of excellent writing. But my outright favorite line from Morgott comes after you've actually defeated him and he's lying weak on the floor. We are all forsaken.
We are all forsaken.
It may seem so simple, but the weight of this line is immense, because he is in fact correct. Almost all of the main characters in Elden Ring have been abandoned in some way or another. Mainly by either Marika or Miquella, it's true, but it's not even just the main characters. The entire land has been abandoned by the Greater Will, and the land itself just seems to be doomed. And this is all summed up perfectly by 4 simple words: absolute cinema by Morgott.
Thou who approacheth destined death.
The top 3 for me were very hard to decide, and I think they could all be interchanged, depending on your preference. Malekith is my favorite boss all around, so I am a little bit biased with this placement, but also for good reason. I think Malekith has some of the best voice acting I've ever heard. I don't even know how it's possible to make your voice sound like that whilst maintaining intelligibility. It's very impressive, so already we're off to a great start. But I think the sheer fact that you can unlock an entire secret node of dialogue from him by completing his quest is what gives him the edge for me over Morgoth. He is a semi-intelligent beast, so his lines are not quite as intelligent as some of the others, which makes sense, but it's really the delivery and lore relevance that makes it for me. No one will ever forget, "O death, become my blade once more."
Oh, death. Become my blade once more.
I mean, Jesus Christ, just look at him. The best cutscene in the game for me. My two favorite lines from him are, "Thou who approacheth destined death." I can't really even explain why I love it so much. I just think it flows so perfectly with the music and his voice. And then, upon defeating the player in Phase 2, he says, "Cower before Malekith, the Black Blade."
Cower before Malekith, the Black Blade.
It's just so menacing and cool, I love it. This line surprisingly has its own lore implications because it's revealed with Malekith's helm that he was feared by all the demigods and is considered to be the most fearsome creature in the lands between. Cower before Malekith, the Black Blade.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
Who else but the poet himself? Upon much consideration, I decided that Mesmer the Impaler has the best voice lines in the game. I think why I chose him as number one is that the build-up of his entire character and the perfect delivery that lived up to the hype is what nailed him in the top spot for me. He's just so damn cool. I remember hearing, "Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?" in the trailer and getting chills down my spine. He just delivers on all fronts. I really like how he can sum up an entire war with one line. "Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Mesmer's flame." Obeying Marika's orders, all those who are deemed impure must be impaled. But the beauty and irony of the story is that he is a hypocrite. He himself is as impure as they come and is cursed by an abyssal serpent. His words and actions almost remind me of Hitler in a way, obsessed with cleansing the impurities of another culture, yet incapable of cleansing his own. And it's with this storyline in mind that I think he delivers the absolute best line in the whole game. Upon defeating the player, he states, "O lightless creature, embrace thine oblivion, as shall I."
O lightless creature, embrace thine oblivion, as shall I.
And it's the "as shall I" that's added that makes it for me. It could have easily been left as "O lightless creature, embrace thine oblivion," and it would still be good. But the "as shall I" that elevates it above all others for me. Obsessed with cleansing those devoid of light, upon releasing his inner serpent, he finally decides to embrace his curse rather than fight it any longer. And the delivery of this line in such a monotone voice, as if he really has shed all his humanity, while still belittling you and calling you a lightless creature, yet finally admitting that he is one himself, is just so beautiful for me. I honestly repeated this phrase to myself for days on end after playing the DLC. My girlfriend actually started getting annoyed with me. Worth it though. Anyway, this brings us to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm very curious to know your thoughts and some of your favorite lines in the comments below. Until next time, guys.